Hey, Live, Learn, Grow, checking in, and it's nighttime. That's why it's dark. Yes, in the vehicle. So I want to talk about marble and the process of making a stone smooth. And during the process, there is a big mess on the way to the progress. So no matter what it is you are going through, know that during the time of process, it will look like a big mess, but it has to happen that way. So in the process of carving out a sculpture, I used to do sculpture. And so you get this big block, this stone, and it doesn't look like anything. I mean, it's gritty, it's dirty, it's got stuff all over, and it's square. And what happens when you are transitioning from a stone to a sculpture, there's a lot of process. There's some chipping away that has to happen, and you get a chisel, you get a hammer, and it's hard and it's a lot of work. And that takes a long time, and there's rocks and dust and stuff flying everywhere, and it just kind of feels like it's going nowhere. And then after you finally get to the point where you see what's encased in the stone, because most sculptors will tell you the image that's within the stone emerges. You really don't always go in with a plan. It kind of tells you what it is when you go through the process of cutting away the pieces that no longer belong, right? So you have to kind of dig into it, and once you dig into it, you see what's encased in that stone. And once you see it, then the next part is to make it a reality, right? To go forth and figure out how to best bring out that image and bring out what's in that stone. And so then you may chisel a little bit, and then you get out your saw, and then you may start to, sand with a big heavy grit. Like, there's different levels of grit. So in the beginning, the grit is really hard, it's heavy, it's thick, and you have to use a handheld grinder, right, that does it for you, because you need a lot of power for this beginning process. Once you get to the place where now you can see what this thing is gonna be, but it's not smooth, it's still rough. And there's a thing that's within marble where it's shiny, right? There's this whole part of it that is beautiful, but there's more grit that has to take place. And there's also a washing process. So not only are you removing grit, removing excess stone, but then the part of the final steps, you have to wash away the dust and everything that settled during the process, right? So we blow it away, we use air, we use water, sometimes you can even sandblast. It just depends on what you want this thing to look like. But once you see the image and you see what the stone is to become, then you go forth with this process and you grind and you use the grit, and then you get to a place where you don't have to use the heavy duty sander. Then you start to really go in, right? This is where the detail happens, and you get the piece of paper, the piece of sandpaper, because now you got to fine tune it, right? The heavy grinder would be too much. So the process starts to scale down a little bit, right? Is this making sense? The mess in the process leads to the progress. So go through, I got the little piece of paper, and now I'm fine tuning, and I'm really getting in the crevices, and I'm finding all those places that need to be removed or smoothed out. And then you get the water and you wash it over and you wash it over, and before you know it, the beautiful shiny marble that we know and see when we see a sculpture, that emerges. But it doesn't show up that way, and it was a process, and it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of time. You have to wear a mask, you might get cut, you might bleed, you might have to do it in the cold, you might have to do it in the rain. The last sculpture I did was for a show, and that's exactly what happened. I was in the cold, we had heaters, we had tents, there was a process, and the process wasn't fun. But in the end, there was something beautiful that came out of it. In the end, the progress was worth the process. So stay with it. If you're looking at mess right now, realize it's part of the process. So embrace it, because once you get to progress, you'll look back and realize, aha, I had to go through it. It had to happen, right? It had to happen, and you're stronger because of it. All right, guys, live, learn, grow. Have a great night.